Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are joining us from around the world, and welcome to the latest in the SIPS MENA series of events. My name is Dana Rassam, and I am the Social Media and Events Manager at SIPS MENA. Today, we are hosting a webinar along with GEP about how to operationalize sustainable procurement in your enterprise, turning your goals into results. We have two panelists on the call today, Natalie Henfrey, FSIPS, who is the Consulting Director at GEP, and Antoine Martin, who is a Strategic Account Executive at Incentivizes. We also have Abdel Halim here, who is the Head of Software Sales at GEP and will be moderating the session today. If you have any questions during the session, please type them in the Q&A section below. We will allocate some time at the end of the session to answer all of your questions. And now, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Halim. Halim, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dana. Thank you, SIPS MENA. I'm just going to turn on my camera for a few minutes just to say hello to everybody. My name is Abdel Halim Ahmed. I'm head of Middle East, Africa, and Turkey, based in the UAE. So happy to see a lot of interest in sustainability in general, but sustainability and procurement joining us today. I hope that you find this session useful, especially having two amazing panelists from GEP and from Incentivizes, which we will get to that part towards the end. So again, I see a lot of folks joining from all over the world. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy days and joining us today. I'll move to my presentation now. Okay, and I think by now everyone is able to see their presentation.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. So just a quick one about GEP and who we are and what we do, and very focused on our sustainability pledge. So GEP is a purely supply chain and procurement company who's been in business for about 23 plus years, serving 110 countries with over 500 customers, with 5,500 employees, and also 24 offices all around the world. Procurement supply chain is all that we do. We provide our end-to-end solutions to our customers to complete, not compete with their existing investments that they've had in place. And the company strategy lines up very well with sustainability in general, but also ESG being at the heart of our procurement offering to all of our customers that we serve globally. We're part of we've been part of massive digital transformation journeys with customers before. But now in the recent time, we've seen more than ever a larger focus on sustainability in procurement and supply chain, which is the heart of our topic today. So if we take a look at GEP's sustainability pledge, how is GEP uniquely positioned to support our clients and customers and partners and work all of us collaboratively together in order to reach our sustainability goals. And these goals could be defined and strategized by each customer in a different way, but we've also come up with an ESG framework that we will showcase in a couple of minutes, just to show that to everyone attending this session today. But it's because of our deep procurement and supply chain expertise, working with all these global and local and regional organizations, analyzing their spend, supporting their daily procurement activities, but also help them in building their procurement strategies and be future ready to tackle all the issues that are predictable at the moment, or issues that you become resilient enough for unpredictable market situations and circumstances that we may face in the future. We provide our end-to-end solutions, not just from a software perspective, but also from a services perspective, where we have done this with many, many customers around the world. And all of this feeds into our sustainability experience as well. Our leadership is also extremely committed to the sustainability pledge, where they themselves, they take, whether professional or individual initiatives to support sustainability in procurement and supply chain. And you can see also this in the structure of GEP, as our ownership structure is 50% women-owned business, which also brings GEP to a sustainable society in terms of the professionals that work in GEP, and also an extension of that is our customers and partners that we work with. We've also done a lot of interesting work with many customers around the world on how to operationalize ESG, and this is something that we will also discuss in detail today. And happy to have our panelists today that they also have very rich experience in bringing ESG at the heart of operations, and obviously providing our inbuilt delivery infrastructure from different category advisor groups that we create with our customers, working very closely within the GEP walls with different SMEs from different categories, and also providing capabilities from a market intelligence and a center of excellence perspective to bring these best practices and strategies to our customers, but also learn from the challenges that we see our customers face and bring it back into our solution and end-to-end offerings. So one of the things that we have, the team at GEP have seen in the last 18 to 24 months is it was very challenging for procurement professionals to have a ESG framework that is metrics based, and these are things that you could look at into your organization, but also extend to your outside stakeholders, such as your suppliers community, which form a very important part of your ESG pledge as an organization and a procurement function, and bring these metrics in a way that it could feed back into your organization and support your strategy building and decision making within your procurement function, and to come up with this ESG framework. So these are some of the pillars of our framework that you can see here on the screen. Looking at, for example, if we take some sample metrics from waste, looking at percentage reduction in volume of waste produced, waste diverted away from landfill, again, diversity metrics, which is very, very important to look at how diverse your workforce is, and that obviously supports a lot of new ideas, different ideas coming from different individuals, all together working to support the same cause and role within their organizations, and other areas like responsible business practices and social responsibility. So it's a very comprehensive ESG framework. We are building this based on the experience that we've had with our customers and other companies that we're also discussing and working and partnering with. But also this is the framework that acts as a foundation to build on and improve and provide some other improvements that we see that could bring additions to this framework. But so how do we feed that into our technology offering? And this is just a sample of how the solution is built in a way that this ESG metrics and information and data points are well integrated within your source to pay processes within the GP software, but also going down into the supply chain execution side of your supply management functions. So it's really within embedded within the heart of the technology that we offer to our customers. And we also strongly believe that our sustainability pledge and ESG in general, collaboration and partnerships is at the heart of making this successful, whether it is from a strategy development perspective or also from an execution perspective. And that's why we've partnered with EcoVadis, who since their founding in, I think, 2007, EcoVadis has grown to become the world's largest and most trusted provider of business sustainability ratings. And our relationship of GEP and EcoVadis is a very long-term and strategic partnership in order to bring these sustainability risk scores inside our platform, embedded in our technology, to provide our procurement professionals and users using the software to make to enable them with technology to support their decision-making process. It's very important to partner as much as you can, because we're all in this together, and that's the main foundation of our partner with EcoVadis, plus believing in the value that they add to the full source-to-pay solution. So one of the interesting things, and we hear this all the time from, and it's good that now people are also, again, meeting face-to-face. I know that this is not an example of a face-to-face meeting, but because it also allows people taking time from their busy schedules and join these sessions virtually. But in all the conversations, or most of the conversations that we're having as a procurement community these days, it's sustainable procurement is at the heart of these discussions. And whether other functions, departments, stakeholders, they agree or confess to this or not, we know that procurement is in the driving seat to bring sustainable procurement to reality. And sustainable procurement in general includes many aspects, such as circular procurement, green procurement, responsible procurement and sourcing, and also social procurement. I was visiting one of our customers a couple of weeks back, and it was very interesting to see that they had a sign on their waste bins that was kind of telling their employees that circular economy is coming. Please do the right thing. So when you see also these customers, organizations, companies, they're taking that step of awareness, at least at this stage, to make their employees aware. So I hope that whoever suggested that idea was from procurement. That would make my day. But yes, procurement is in the driving seat from a sustainability perspective. However, again, being procurement professionals, being under pressure by different stakeholders, management, suppliers, internal and external factors, we are often frustrated when it comes to our sustainability mission. So the traditional procurement frameworks are no longer fit for purpose. I think all of us being procurement professionals with many, many years of experience, we've not so often now, but a lot of procurement professionals, they look at this as, let's get bids from suppliers, like let's do technical evaluation, commercial evaluation, and just do the scoring and award the business. But that's no longer fit for purpose. And like I mentioned earlier, also executive commitment and senior management commitment, and even stakeholders around you who support procurement activities, they should also be first aware, interested, and also part of this procurement sustainability pledge to look at non-monetary benefits. It's just not the best bids or best commercials and best monetary value. There are things that are beyond that. On the other side, which is the external community, and now you can see how procurement is at the heart of this and between multiple stakeholders that we need to bring everybody together. Lack of supplier buy-in as well may be a result of an ESG overload. So suppliers are very important, and I think we have a couple of ideas that we will talk about during our panel discussion, but it's also very important from a scope 3 emissions, for example. And we'll look at that in about 10 minutes from now. And lastly is the data and measurement landscape. How do we measure sustainability factors and metrics within the organization, but also extend to outside to our organization, also look at regulatory bodies following initiatives coming from governments, from other international bodies, but also working very closely with our suppliers. So to get the triple bottom line and look at sustainable procurement we have to also consider 3 areas. And you can see how connected they are. But we always look at profits. We always, as obviously as people, we have different individual decision-making processes, but we also need to consider building that and having that sustainable future for next generations and preserving our planet. And these are main areas that we need to consider, and we really need to look at them, and we'll discuss in a second. But looking at the frameworks that we put in place, look at effective collaboration means and ways to work together, not only within our organizations, but also extend that to the outside world, and have these efficient metrics and measurements that we can measure the success. So if we start with frameworks, for example, and you can see that at the most basic level, like the one you see here, procurement frameworks are about delivering savings. And we've been doing that for a very long time. And I'm not saying that you should stop looking at savings, please not. Please don't. Please go ahead with making what's best decisions for your individual companies, but also we need to keep this in mind. Some may also consider value, but ultimately it's also about money. So it's a very finance-based approach that sets expectations with the rest of the organization, also becomes a self-defining role. So as procurement professionals, we default to speaking with stakeholders in financial terms, and they don't expect anything different. They always see procurement as the last department within a company that commits to spending money on goods and services. So it's that financial lens is what we often use to develop our frameworks with. And this is how we see how it needs to move from that framework to this framework, where you have to have, in terms of your strategy, this may mean a commitment to sourcing new and sustainable materials or different designs which reduce cost, or better demand management in terms of challenging replacement items. also from a process perspective, how do we respect our planet and its people in our day-to-day activity? And that's something also very critical to look at as to be part of your future ESG-friendly frameworks, but also provide these measurements for your performance and how have we protected our planet whilst delivering savings. So we're not asking people to, or procurement professionals, to move away from making savings and driving better value for their organizations, but there has to be a marriage between delivering these savings and also protecting our planet and being ESG and sustainability and environmental conscious when we make these decisions. So from a supplier ESG perspective, and we have an interesting point that we'll discuss in the panel shortly. There is a challenge that suppliers have multiple customers. Your suppliers don't just work with you, they work with other organizations themselves. And it could be challenging for suppliers to work with multiple customers, with multiple goals, with multiple targets that they need to meet. And so it could cause equal frustration to the supplier as well, trying to handle all these customer requirements and different customer requirements coming from different companies. So it's a very disconnected or unconnected approach to a ESG framework from a supplier, and I can see that myself as well as GEP, because we are a partner, a provider, and a supplier to our customers. When there are positions and situations that different customers, they have different views of similar things, it could put the supplier in a position that we have to be very innovative and creative on, and maybe create custom means and ways to deal with these customers. And that's not very easy for a supplier to do, and you have to have the right amount of resources to do that. So some of the ways that we can use to mitigate these challenges is integrating ESG in the supplier development frameworks. And the next slide will show a sample of that. Also, supplier segmentation is very critical and very important to the overall development plan of that supplier, because we can't just have one size fits all for all our suppliers. So segmentation is key, and then developing slightly tailored approaches to different segments is also key to mitigate some of these challenges, and also cross-company collaboration in order to have a standard approach and agree between these stakeholders. And this is how you embed ESG in your supplier development activity. It's not a clear cut that you deal with your suppliers and you just say that whoever below or above that threshold is ESG compliant or not. It's very important that we also help our suppliers to reach these achievable and sensible and reasonable ESG targets that will obviously grow in time, but also are equally beneficial for these suppliers. So rather than, again, going back to that financial lens, looking at your suppliers and your procurement activities, those are the very transactional ways of dealing with your suppliers, moving to welcoming them into your organization, being cooperative with them, and jointly develop with them these targets, and then let them drive this change and move into that. So ESG embedded in the supplier development activity, and it's very important for the ESG framework as a whole for these organizations. And before some of my colleagues and my head of marketing, I know he's going to tell me to stop talking in a few minutes just to move to the panel discussion. But very quickly, measuring, monitoring, and managing our sustainable procurement initiatives and also technology landscape is very important for the framework as a whole, and also your sustainability pledge, and which will enable you to select the right metrics and help you to select these right metrics with your whether internal initiatives or external initiatives. So as previously mentioned, there's a lot of metrics you could use. You need to select what is right for your brand, understand what you're trying to drive, and that sweet spot where you can make a difference to the planet. Please seek feedback from senior colleagues so you can understand what external stakeholders, including investors and shareholders, think is also important. You need to identify and look what you can measure, but also extend that to your internal and external customers. See what their needs are, their expectations, and how far you can cascade that into your supply chain. With that, I thank everyone for sitting through my presentation. I'm very happy that attendees did not start dropping. I hope that you've seen that this is something that is useful. And that's it from my presentation, and we will move to the panel discussion. Good to see you, Natalie. See you in 10 days in Dubai.
Yep, looking forward to it.
Perfect. Antoine?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great.
Also looking forward to seeing you in Dubai sometime soon.
Yes, absolutely. I haven't made it over quite yet, but it's on my list of great things to do next year.
Okay, perfect. So again, thank you, Natalie and Antoine, for joining us today. I think we've seen a lot of interactions from the attendees and participants with us, which is always great. But we'll jump directly to the panel questions and discuss them together. So I'll start with you, Antoine. When we're looking at managing scope 3 or any ESG data collection needed, sorry, something. I hope everybody can still see me. Something just came on my screen. Okay. So
I think it's the poll question. Yeah. Sorry.
When we've been doing this for close to 2 years and we never get better with it, right? We started the same every time is like this is the first time. So managing scope 3 or any ESG data collection needed is very time consuming, Antoine, and requires investment either through bringing in new people, refocusing time through other investments, or even outsourcing to another corporate function. With new guidelines and rules in place or on the horizon, how can we deal with this challenge?
Yeah, Halim. Well, let me say two things before I answer the question. Very briefly, first of all, thank you for inviting inviting me to the panel. It's very good to discuss these things. The second thing is just very briefly for those who don't know, in a nutshell, what EcoVadis is we're a ratings agency. So we are a extra financials, sustainability ratings. So effectively, we provide verified insights to procurement on all different parts of the supply chain, all different types of sizes and geographies. And so we've been working with procurement from the outset. And so we're very proud partners with GP, simply because all of the verified insights that we gather for our clients has the possibility to plug into the GP, I would say, data hub to provide further insights for those procurement professionals using GP. So very happy to be here. Yeah. So on managing scope 3, you know, I think there are 2 levels, and they're very much intertwined. But the way we look at it is first and foremost probably the strategy, and we spoke a lot about, you know, how and how much, etc. I would actually focus on the why first. You know, why are we doing this? Where's the pressure coming from? Is it, you know, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders? Is it clients asking? Is it investors? Is it regulators? Is it a combination of those things? And so, as always in strategy, you know, having the correct sticks and carrots, or the incentives and penalties, can really help you or hinder your program. And so we have quite a lot of examples of different clients, you know, using in different ways, different incentives and different penalties to really drive action at scale. The second thing I would say on top of strategy is communication. You can have a very, very good strategy, but if badly communicated to your third parties, the response rate won't be half as good as if you have a well thought out plan to communicate upstream to their suppliers that ESG is going to be asked, improvements are going to be asked, and this is how the data is going to be used. And what we found in the most positive programs that we run with GP is when there is a good and thorough communication upstream. So I would focus on those 2 things: first strategy, then communication, to summarize.
No, great. Thank you very much. Great insight. And I'll ask you this. I'll ask you, Natalie, this question. So, good procurement leaders, the very good ones that we work with every single day, how do you think they can help their supplier community with this just overload of requests that are coming to these suppliers, asking them for ESG data today, not next year, not next month? So how do you think good procurement leaders could manage this and help their suppliers to provide this data?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've been working in procurement long enough to have been around at the dawn of supply development and value chain engineering about 15, 20 years ago. And I remember this overload happening. And it was driven home to me one day when I went to a packaging supplier on behalf of a client. And they said to me, look, you do realise, Natalie, it's not just your client who is asking for us to share forecasts. It's actually all of these other ones as well. And I have a room full of people here who are all working on different systems, different methods of forecast sharing. And he said, to be quite honest, sometimes we just make it up. And actually, once you start probing, you find out that behaviour is duplicated. And that is the concern really around supplier overload. It's about whether we will actually be able to engage with them for them to send us accurate data. And it's actually a lot more serious than supply development days. I mean, we're going to have to collect this data for regulatory compliance. So it's really important we get this right. So I'd say for procurement leaders, don't reinvent the wheel. Ask the suppliers for what you need. Don't gold plate it. And ask them which formats and platforms they use. You might find that there is a common kind of platform in use that you should maybe consider adapting yourself. I would also see if there are any sector-specific groups I could belong to. I'm aware of ones in defence, in telecoms, in renewable energy, for example, here in Europe. But it's worth scanning around for your own region to see if there's anything that you can join. There are also an increasing amount of benchmarking clubs out there, which are cross-sector collaborations around collecting data from shared suppliers, mainly in the indirect space. And also then look at ways of getting the data that don't involve you having to engage heavily with suppliers. There is a kind of benchmarking or scope 3 emissions benchmarking, which is totally based on spend analysis, using commonly available data tables to actually measure what your scope 3 emissions are. Those are credible. It means you don't have to engage with 20,000 people in your supply base. So look at what you actually need.
Okay, perfect. And Antoine, maybe if you want to share some insights about how good procurement leaders could support that, maybe you can give an example what EcoVadis is also providing from a rating perspective. I remember we were participating in an RFP a few months back, and they asked us for our EcoVadis rating to submit that. I said, that's great. At least as a customer, you are requesting something like Natalie just mentioned, that there's a system that some are using. Why not just join that system rather than trying to make up new things? So how do you think procurement leaders are now managing this and helping their suppliers with providing ESG data today?
Yeah, thanks, Halim. So yeah, indeed. I mean, EcoVadis, as GP and often in conjunction, has numerous different applications. But we're both on the procurement side, so for existing, I would say, suppliers, but also on the sourcing side, so for new suppliers. And so, indeed, increasingly, a lot of our clients are using their existing program to put filters, at times exclusion filters, for those suppliers who are not EcoVadis rated, or who don't have a minimum score, or who don't have a minimum improvement in their score. They use that as a filtering criteria to actually give access to the tender. Some others use it as a awarding criteria. So if you're not EcoVadis rated, and you do win the tender, we will ask you to do it. It's a condition, in the contract. So there's lots of different scenarios, and our client success people will suggest, lots of different ideas. At the end of the day, it's procurement who's in the driving seat. So they're the ones who set the strategy. They're the ones who, have the ambition, have the vision, and our role really is to provide a level of service and provide a level of verified insights for them to get there. But we certainly don't call the shots. We're the mere pens, and the procurement is the author, if you allow the analogy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it was very interesting when I had this customer request for our EcoVadis ratings. Although I haven't seen them because through confidentiality, they are sent directly to the customer. I hope we're doing well. But it was just, I was personally happy that some of these customers and companies are taking this as a base. Like you've just said, it's more of a pre-qualification criteria in order to be invited to further stages within the RFP, which is always great. I'll go back to you, Natalie. Again, going back to that financial lens. As procurement professionals, stakeholders around us, they were always used to us, having these commercial discussions, financial discussions, savings, discounts, baffle, all these beautiful negotiation terms that we use in procurement. But some of the stakeholders around us now, they feel a bit surprised that a procurement professional will be sitting across the table and saying, so why don't we award the business to that supplier? They're slightly more expensive, but they're definitely more ESG ready, friendly, aware, committed. How do you see that from a procurement landscape perspective, and how can we remove that standard way of people looking at us as, you know, that we just scroll down through a proposal just to the price line, rather than going into that proposal and see what that supplier can help from an ESG perspective?
Yeah, so I think to an extent we have to reinvent ourselves. In procurement, we have managed to build ourselves a reputation as being cost cutters. In some businesses, we may be seen as the people who stop you getting the things that you want, and we have to reinvent ourselves as being better communicators with our stakeholders. And, you know, good stakeholder management is around understanding your audience. So if you think about your CFO cares about money. But actually what we're finding increasingly now is that companies who don't have strong enough sustainable sourcing policies or an ESG strategy in place are not getting investment. They're not getting access to really important financial products that they need to operate. And so it's not just about paying for the lowest price for something. It's actually those things which are the lifeblood of your company and needs to keep going. I was looking at some tools the other day which the big investment companies use to check up on ESG in some markets. And there is a huge amount of data out there, either coming from third parties or self-declared by organisations which investors have got access to. Your CFO should care a lot about that. So I would start to understand this and understand the consequences of not doing it, really, of not supporting a sustainability agenda. Equally, if you think of your chief marketing officer, they care about the brand. And your brand has probably signed up to some kind of target, whether it's a government-based one, net zero by 2050, or an even more aggressive internal one. And you need to make your marketing people understand what you are contributing towards that. The final thing I would say is that, you know, we all joined procurement for different reasons than ESG, and we did it maybe because we're interested in commercial aspects or we like negotiation. I don't know anyone who joined because they wanted to make the planet a better place, if we're quite honest. Now, I fell into sustainable procurement when I was a local authority procurement manager about 20 years ago, and it's been very important to me ever since, but I'm quite unusual in that respect. What we're still not seeing in procurement is people specifically recruiting people who've got procurement skills and have ESG skills. I've not seen anything like that asked for on a job description, for example. And we need to start to think about, has that skill set changed? Do we need to have people who really understand ESG to better manage their suppliers and to be able to enable those internal conversations around the subject?
Beautiful. Yeah. Maybe in 20 seconds, Natalie, because that's a very interesting story that you just said before we move to the last question. How was it, just in like 20 seconds, how was it when you were having these sustainability or ESG, maybe it wasn't called ESG at that time, about 10, 20 years back, when you fell in love in this the first time and you were trying to explain to people that it's not only about monetary savings, how was the first perception? People were just looking at it like, what is she talking about? Or were they like, yeah, it makes sense, maybe that's what we need to think about?
No, it's very challenging because it was public money. So public sector organisations, so it was actually very hard to justify going with a more environmentally friendly organisation. So we had to really play the benefits to them of what we would actually do, for example, awarding to an ESG friendly local supplier, how that would help the local economy. So again, it was around understanding our stakeholders, understanding what the outcome would be, and making sure they understood that and being able to articulate it as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And last question, although I think I'm personally enjoying this, I think we can talk about this for another hour or two, but I don't think we'll have a lot of attendees waiting with us for all that time. But this is to you, Antoine, and we'll come back to you, Natalie. You've mentioned something, Antoine, about how the pressure is there from getting this ESG data. It could be from senior management, it could be from stakeholders, it could be from regulatory authorities, certification bodies around them, all of them. How do you see procurement managers, they can ensure that they get quality data in order to provide or in order to comply with regulations and requirements?
Yeah, thanks, Halim. Yeah, indeed, there is an issue in the market, independent of GP, independent of ECOVADIS, independent of the Middle East. It's a global issue. Every single sector, every size, I would argue, and probably every geography. It's data availability, and when we drill down into carbon, it's even more of an issue. So ESG has had this issue of availability for a while. It's getting better, and you know, all these pressures I've been speaking about definitely help with regards to the uptake, etc. But there is still in the market a very large pool of organizations who still rely on self-declarative data, i.e. a supplier saying X, Y, Z, and procurement taking their word for it, not checking, not updating, you know, and that's leaving the door, as Natalie was alluding to earlier, a huge risk, both from a marketing point of view, but also from a financial point of view. We have quite a few companies who we know of who have had supply chain issues, very large issues, and when it hits the press, it has a direct impact on the share price. So it's not even the CPO speaking to the CFO, it's the CPO speaking to the CEO. And it's often the CPO speaking to the CEO for the last time, because that risk was not contained, is what I'm getting at. So I don't want to threaten anybody, but this is based on actual fact. And there's lots of examples that we can provide, and I'm sure GP as well can provide some. But you know, to answer the question, you know, very specifically, we have inside ECOVADIS a very much verified approach. So all of the claims that any supplier or any company that we're rating is making needs to be backed up by a set of documentation, actually, you know, evidence or proof to corroborate what they're saying. And so our over 500 analysts now, what they do is they of course read the answers to the questionnaires, but they also look at, you know, how is this backed up? And then they go a step further by interfacing with lots of different databases and sources of information to really see what else is being said about this company. And it can be, you know, negative, of course, but it can also be positive. It can have an impact on the final score. All this to say, if you have at any one point in time in your supply chain, ESG, or actually any other data on a supplier, which is not verified, it might have worked in the past, but increasingly you're leaving the door open for something to happen, which is way beyond your control. So I would strongly emphasize to implement as much as possible a verified approach.
No, thank you, Antoine. Very useful. What's your take on that, Natalie? How do the procurement managers make sure that they're getting quality data in order to comply with ESG requirements? And what can they do today? I know that it's something for the future, but what is available today and something that they can go home with today and start doing from tomorrow?
It's a good question. I completely agree with what Antoine said around, you know, it's got to be verified data now. I would be taking a step back and looking at my strategy right now and looking at how I allocated my resources. What I'm generally seeing out there are 3 different approaches to data collection. First of all, some companies are collecting supplier data and onboarding them into data collection and doing verification when a contract comes up for renewal. That's great, but it only works if you have a decent drumbeat of contracts which are coming up for renewal. We have some organisations who are identifying high-risk categories and they are starting with them and doing a big category exercise. Again, that's actually a pretty good approach. The third approach is actually some organizations who are going to hit all of their suppliers and are going to do a very large supplier engagement outreach. Now, this depends a lot on the resources you have. But yes, if I was a procurement leader working in a business now, I would be going home and saying, what do I need to do to my procurement organization to make sure that I'm de-risking the way that I collect data and that I'm able to get that verification done? Because it's not easy. It takes a lot of time. I calculated recently that your average person, even if they worked on this full time, could only get through about 100 suppliers a month at most. And we wouldn't be allowing them lunch breaks or holidays for that as well. So, you know, it's it is very resource intensive. So we have to work out how many people we need, be prepared to go ask for that investment from our organisations, and in the short term, how we refocus perhaps some of our teams to make sure that we're getting verified data and we're able to satisfy particularly those regulatory requirements.
Okay, interesting. And I know we have to leave some time for Q&A, but something just came on my mind, Natalie, when you said earlier that not all, but a lot of CFOs, they only care about savings, they care about money. We don't want them to reach that stage when they start caring about ESG, when they start being penalized for being not ESG compliant. So what do you think of that? Is that something that we can see happening coming up very soon?
Unfortunately, yes, I think that might happen. I think the saving grace, particularly of the legislation that we're starting to see in Europe, is that you do get a couple of strikes to get things wrong before you actually get financially penalised for it. So you get a couple of warnings. So I believe the French devoir de vigilance, for example, and Antoine will know better than me, you only start to get fined on your third offence. And I believe the German legislation is very similar. So you do get a couple of chances to fail. And unfortunately, I think organisations that will have to happen for people to be properly on board with the way that we have to start to work now. Sorry, that sounds very bleak, but that's the harsh reality of where we are.
Yeah. No, thank you very much for that. I think we have okay, I think so. Let's give some time for Q&A, but before we do that, Natalie, Antoine, thank you very much for answering the panel questions. It's been a great discussion. I hope that everybody here attending with us, they have found that as useful. And I'll try to read through the questions. I know that, Antoine, you're answering some of the questions as well, which is great.
If any of the answers are not extensive enough, please, by all means, write to us.
That's completely fine, because I'm about to ask the question, but I see Antoine Martin is typing an answer. So that's great. So we have a question from Ishwar. ESG is a paradigm shift in procurement. So the need is to have additional skill sets. How the young professionals can gain these skills to implement the ESG initiatives within the organization. I'll start with you, Antoine, because you started typing, and then we'll go to Natalie.
No, I think it goes back to what Natalie was saying earlier. Increasingly you have this new context, which procurement historically has not been faced with, which is how to help align the corporate objectives with the third parties and how to drive change and impact at scale with the third parties. And that indeed takes a new set of skills, a new, possibly new knowledge that we didn't know about before, or that certain procurement professionals did not know about before. But increasingly, should it be SIPs or other universities who have procurement courses, and I'm not a teacher, but I do intervene in a few MBAs and master's classes in the UK and in France. A lot of the procurement courses now have a sustainability dimension, and so it's refreshing to know this. The other thing that we look at EcoVadis, because we do an index every year or every 18 months, is to look at also what is the motivation of young procurement people getting into the profession, what they're passionate about. And sustainability is going up and up and up and up every year. And so if you take those two things, sustainability in normal procurement courses having a larger role, and younger people wanting sustainability early on in their career, I'm quite hopeful. Counterintuitively, if you may say, but I'm quite hopeful for the future.
I agree. I think what I'm seeing when I go out and talk to people is younger people coming into the profession are very clued up. We know that millennials in particular want to work for organisations with strong ESG credibility. The challenge we have is our procurement leaders are a bit older and a bit less interested. So what we have to do is to make sure that enthusiasm and knowledge coming into the profession is actually shared with more senior people through upwards mentoring, etc., to make sure that the people who are leading the organisation, who really understand procurement as supply chain and have that experience, are starting to get more clues up about sustainability as well.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Natalie and Antoine. I think that was it for us today. Thank you everyone who's taken the time out to come and be part of this session. I hope you found it useful. Thank you, SIPSMENA. Thank you, Antoine, from EcoVadis, our great partner.
Thank you.
And Natalie, see you soon in Dubai.
See you then. Thanks, everyone.
All the best. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.